Lesson 3. How can we manage tropical rainforests? What are the rates of deforestation? In 1950, about 15% of the Earth's land surface was covered by rainforest. In fewer than 50 years, more than half the world's tropical rainforests have fallen victim to the fire and the chainsaw, and the rate of destruction is still accelerating. Pinning down exact numbers is nearly impossible, but most experts agree that we are losing up to 80,000 acres of tropical rainforest daily, and significantly degrading another 80,000 acres every day on top of that. Along with this loss and degradation, we are losing some 135 plant, animal and insect species every day, or some 50,000 species a year, as forests fall. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, overall tropical deforestation rates this decade are 8.5% higher than during the 1990s. While this figure pertains to all the forests in the world's tropics, researchers believe that the loss of primary tropical rainforest, the wildest and most diverse swaths, has increased by as much as 25% since the 1990s. More than 20% of the Amazon rainforest is already gone, and much of this is severely threatened as destruction continues. It is estimated that the Amazon alone is vanishing at a rate of 20,000 square miles a year. If nothing is done to curb this trend, the entire Amazon could be gone within another 50 years. If deforestation continues at current rates, scientists estimate that 80 to 90% of the tropical rainforest ecosystems will be destroyed by the year 2020. So why should tropical rainforests be protected? Preservation of biodiversity, which is invaluable to forest productivity. 2. Renewable source of forest production, such as timber, medicines, fruits, not to mention chocolate. There is also potential to discover many new foods, domestic animals, industrial products, and medicines in rainforests. Most obviously, rainforests are a source of valuable timber, mahogany, ebony, hardwood. Wood has many properties desirable to human beings and animals, but in addition, many rainforest plants produce insecticides, herbicides and fungicides, which could be useful to humans. A number of plants and trees in the rainforest have proved useful as producers of medicines, and many drugs have been found in pharmaceuticals of tropical medicine. Quinine, the first known anti-malarial, comes from a neotropical tree, and a curare used as a poison for arrow tips by indigenous peoples in the neotropics is also useful for heart conditions. 1/4 of all our medications come from natural sources. Additionally, about 70% of drugs used today are models of natural chemicals. Most of these medicines come from forests that have been derived from plants, but many other come from fungi, bacteria and reptiles such as snakes. As we continue to deplete the organisms on Earth and homogenize our genetic resources, we increasingly need sources of genetic variability. Since rainforests are so diverse, they provide a vast reservoir of genetic potential. Without such genetic resources, we will have no way of improving breeding stocks of plants and animals. All of our domestic plants and animals come from wild antecedents, which have been altered by interbreeding and selected for traits which are favorable for human use. As we reduce or eradicate our gene pools, our sources of variability decline dangerously. Rainforests also stabilize water flow, maintain water quality, provide watersheds, and regulate runoff of water from soil. In doing so, they prevent flooding, erosion, landslides, and desertification. Erosion is 100 times greater on forested than on forested slopes, for example. Regulation of air quality. Rainforests modify atmospheric chemistry. For example, they can act as carbon sinks and absorb CO2 from the air. They also act as climate stabilizers. Rainforests have influence on rain patterns. The humidity and cloud cover over them affect the climate in many other parts of the world. Rainforests create their own moist environment by recycling rainfall. If they are removed, entire regions become drier, and the rainforests remaining may not be able to maintain conditions sufficiently humid for their own survival. Thus, a destructive cycle continues. Desiccation will not simply be local but regional and global. Without plant roots, particularly true roots, to hold them, thin tropical soils are washed away by heavy tropical rains. Soils in deforested areas cannot retain fertility, since most of the organic matter in the forest is in the vegetation, not in the soil, as in the case of temperate forests. Once some of the vegetation is removed, soil humus levels drop precipitously, with a loss of fertility, and with little vegetation, the complex soil communities of animals, fungi, and bacteria are disrupted, severely impeding the possibility of restoring fertility. Forests are filled with animals and even plants, which prey upon pests or potential pests, mainly insects, of crops or domestic animals. Complex forest ecosystems are much less subject to outbreaks of infestation or infection than are tree plantations or farms. Many of the animals in forests are the sole pollinators of many forest plants, and they are often highly specific to plants they pollinate. Loss of forest cover and thus of animal habitat has caused and is causing serious problems with the reproduction of forest trees. They also provide sources of education knowledge, which includes biological and medical research of all kinds, as well as education for people about natural systems, climates, biodiversity, and soils. Rainforests provide sources of housing for people and animals, as well as aesthetic factors and sources of recreation. And finally, there are ethical reasons too. Humans at the moment are the dominant species, having a responsibility to protect the earth. The services which forests provide are incomparable. Nothing can be substituted for them. Most human efforts to make such substitutions have ultimately been unsatisfactory. These efforts have amounted to serious interventions into natural systems and add to the human impact on ecosystems and the environment. Among these interventions have been the replacing of natural controls with synthetic pesticides and natural soil maintenance by inorganic fertilizers. Rainforest services are invaluable, although estimates have made of their monetary worth, and it is not an overstatement to say that their economic worth is incalculable or infinite, since we are totally dependent upon other living organisms for our existence.